Powered by Sports Interaction, Canada Sportsbook.
Hello and welcome to Game Over Vancouver. I am your host for the night. I am Samantha. You can find me on Twitter at SamanthaCP_, and I am joined by my go-to guest, recurring friend of the show, Lachlan at Luck in the Crease. Make sure you go follow him. Doing some great work for Canucks Army lately, and just an all-around great follow. How are you doing tonight, Lachlan?
Thank you so much. I'm doing as well as I can, considering the fact that the Canucks are definitely on their way to finishing 12th to last in the National Hockey League this year.
And I am joined by my go-to guest.
It is what it is. I mean, you can't hate them for winning, but they're doing, you know what? They're doing exactly what we all thought they were, right?
Yeah. Canucks win 5-2 over the Ottawa Senators tonight. Andrei Kuzmenko with 2 goals. JT Miller with another shorthanded goal. And is this their longest win streak of the season? This is their fourth consecutive win.
I think it is. I think it is their longest win streak. I think up until this point, they had not even been able to string together 2 in a row. I think that was the longstanding issue. Not more than two. Yeah, I think that was the bar they had to clear. And
good.
They've done it. They've done it. Just the best time to do it.
Yeah, the Canucks with their 4th straight win. Before we get into it, gonna shout out our sponsor, Sports Interaction. Want to bet? Then get in on the action at Sports Interaction. The boys of summer are back on the diamond and March Madness is on deck. Bet pre-game, live and play, or on one of our many prop bets. Sports Interaction makes it easy to deposit, play, and cash out. Head to sportsinteraction.com/SDPN, or in Ontario, download the app now using the QR code at the bottom of the screen. 19 plus, please play responsibly. All right, let's get into it. What was the highlight of this scintillating Canucks Senators game for you?
Ooh, I mean, I would have said up until Patrick Johnson definitely jinxed him. No, he didn't, but I'm going to blame him anyway. Jinxing Thatcher Demko's shutout there, right at the very end. I think you got to, I think there's the Dakota Joshua play that ended up being Nils Aman's goal, like that little just deke right to the front of the net that gave them the 3-0 lead. That was gorgeous. But overall, I think it's probably Andrei Kuzmenko. I know Kuzmenko was a big talking point on Twitter after he scored. He ended up with 2 goals on the night, including an empty netter. I mean, hey man, like he's looking great. He's looking great. Like he hasn't lost a step all season. There has not been a point where he's hit kind of the rookie lull. And I know he's not technically a standard NHL rookie, but for the most part throughout this season, like he's been very consistent, and that's huge for a team that's struggled so much with consistency, especially from their forwards.
So you're telling me you'd rather have Kuzmenko than the late 1st-round pick?
Now hold on. I'm not necessarily. Here's the thing. I first of all, considering that the Canucks had 2 first-round picks, they could have had both. Is the funny part about that whole conversation, I think. But at the same time, I will just to kind of throw my 2 cents into the ring here. The issue with Kuzmenko has never been about him or about even like his contract. Like I think when they announced his contract extension at the time, what I wrote about at the time was, there is nothing wrong with the player. There's nothing wrong with the contract. It's totally team friendly, totally a nice thing to have. The issue has really nothing to do with him, and so much as the issue of what are the odds that within those next 2 years of Kuzmenko's contract, that the Canucks are going to be not only in the playoffs, but a like serious threat to win. Because and if they're not going to be a serious threat to win the Stanley Cup in the time that he's here, what is really the value in holding on to him? Like we saw that with like the Red Wings a couple years ago with where Steve Yzerman traded Anthony Mantha, who was a great player for the Red Wings at the time, but they moved him because they were like, well, the timeline just doesn't add up. Like we're clearly not going to be competitive while he's in his peak years, so there's not really a good reason to keep him around. We might as well trade him now while he's at his highest value. So, and that was kind of the thing with Kuzmenko. Like, it wasn't an absolute must make deal per se, but I mean, yeah, like you got to ask yourself the question sometimes, like how serious a contender are they going to really be within Kuzmenko's window through no fault of his own? I think he's going to be great throughout the next 2 years, but that's kind of where I'm looking at it from.
Sorry, I'm getting hardcore trolled by Brock McGillis in the chat.
I can see that. Hi, Brock.
Brock says 20-game winning streak. If you all follow, actually do this. Brock is, as many of you know, the founder and intrepid leader of the Alphabet Sports Collective. So go follow ABCS Collective. He says if you follow all of the accounts, the Canucks will make the second round of the playoffs, which is frankly more than the Toronto Maple Leafs can say.
That's very true. I do follow ABCS Collective already, so yeah.
You got to follow it. There was an amazing launch event on Thursday night that I sadly had to miss. I'm still very salty about it, which is why I'm like extra upset that Brock is here trolling me when I couldn't even make it to the party. But if you follow all the accounts, you can see the highlights of what happened at this party.
It looked awesome.
Week. Yeah, it looked awesome. Yeah. Speaking of looking great, JT Miller looking great lately. And I know that's like words that have never crossed my lips this season because I've been on a strong anti JT Miller slant, but he has looked more like the JT Miller of the past 2 seasons lately than the JT Miller of earlier this season. What are your thoughts on his resurgence?
I mean, yeah, I think I forget who. I think it was my good friend Wyatt Arndt who made the point of, hey, it's interesting how suddenly all any issue with JT Miller's play disappears when he's playing the way that he is right now. And it's like, yeah, like that's because yeah, like there's never been, like, a lot of people seem to think it was a very, like, when some of us, including myself, were taking issue with the way that Miller was playing early on the season, that it was like a personal vendetta thing. It's not. It's just about hockey. And like, you're looking at him right now, like he's a completely different player. He looks so much more engaged on top of the puck. He looks so much stronger in his own end, especially on the PK. Like that, and that's really just what we've been looking for all season, especially from a guy who's going into next year, the first year of a contract that's going to pay him a lot of money for 7 years. Like that's what you want to see. If we're getting the player we saw tonight for the majority of the next 7 seasons, it's a lot harder to take issue with that contract. And yeah, he looks light years better of late. And yeah, again, like the PK has been the big thing there, where suddenly the penalty kill is, I don't know, elite, would you say? I think it's getting close.
It's getting
there. With all the shorthanded goals they're scoring. Like that's, you know what, that we got to talk to the NHL about changing the way they score the penalty kill, like what your penalty kill percentage is. It should not only be based on do you kill the penalty, there should be extra points deducted if you score on your own on shorthanded.
I like that. If you're just joining us, the Canucks win 5-2 against the Ottawa Senators, 4th consecutive win. I see there are 32 of you in the chat with us. Hit like if you haven't subscribed yet. Subscribe. Make sure you go follow at SDPN Sports. Go follow Lachlan at Lock in the Crease. We are gonna, what stood out to me tonight was even just looking at the score sheet, and you mentioned earlier that Niels Aman's goal was a gorgeous goal, but also Sheldon Dries scored his 10th goal of the season. Like, that's not that's some secondary scoring that is nothing to sneeze at. And if you had told me at the beginning of the season that Neil Zaman would make the impact he had, that Sheldon Dries would have 10 goals, that Phil DiGiuseppe would have that breakaway that actually was tantalizingly close, I would have laughed. Like, the Canucks' third and fourth lines have looked also significantly better in the last little while.
Yeah, I think you can't argue that they've definitely looked like under Rick Tocchet, the structure has looked a lot better, especially for those bottom lines. And yeah, it's great to see the Canucks finally getting the supporting cast scoring that they've been looking for a long time. It's not necessarily enough to make them like a contender by any stretch, but it's the kind that's it's definitely closer to what you need. Because you look at teams that are like constantly in the playoffs. Like, look at the team that just clinched a playoff spot on March 11th, the Boston Bruins, right? Like, that team has the depth scoring, has a scoring where, if Patrice Bergeron, David Pastrnak, and Brad Marchand aren't scoring, they're still getting it regularly from the other three lines down the middle. Like, that's
why they are the fastest team in NHL history to clinch.
Yeah, like, unreal. And we're not saying the Canucks necessarily need to get to that level of depth.
No, I think they should.
I think they should
think
too.
They should.
But like, it's not necessary. That's easier said than done, I think. Hence why they're the first team to ever clinch this quickly. But I do think that, like, yeah, this is the kind of things you look for. And one of the things that I really hoped for when the Canucks brought in Jim Rutherford and Patrick Allvin from Pittsburgh is that we'd see kind of closer to what the Penguins got, because the Penguins were very good about finding those guys who you've kind of never really heard of, and then all of a sudden you put them on a team with Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin, and suddenly they could score 15 goals a year. Sheldon Dries has been a huge breath of fresh air on that front. He's like, yeah, he's not necessarily like showing that he should be a regular NHLer per se. I think there's still a lot of work on that front to go, but in terms of like from what we've seen from him this season, like, yeah, like, holy cow, they're getting so many more. They're getting so much better contribution from those guys.
Yeah, it's been fun to watch, even while the rational part of my brain is like, why do you keep winning?
I mean, yeah, like, it's one of those, it's like, again, very much this really would have been helpful in, I don't know, October or November.
Yeah.
Before their fate was sealed.
I think if you dig up one of the first shows you and I did together of Game Over, we talked about how the Canucks' start to the season was like, this team is not as bad as its starting record was, or even the first half of the season was. Like, that's why it was confusing. It's like, yeah, I didn't think you were going to be good. I just thought you'd be kind of mediocre to average, like playing for a wild card spot. And I think we both said at the time, like, they are eventually, the most frustrating thing is we're going to have to suffer through this misery first half and be like, get everyone on board to tank, get everyone on board to be like Connor Bedard, Adam Fantilli, like, it's on the board, let's just go for it. And then right at the end, when it doesn't matter anymore, and even like the biggest tank holdouts are like, okay, fine, let's do it, they will win their way to the mushy middle. And I feel like that's exactly what is happening right now.
Yep, that is it, precisely what has happened. I will say, I honestly, I didn't see, I don't think I saw this coming this time around, specifically just because I didn't think that the coaching change was gonna give really much of a boost to what they're doing. But I mean, it's working right now.
I think it was coaching change plus Demko coming back in way better form than he started the season. Yeah. And also an extremely friendly schedule.
Right. There's a lot that's gone right for that's good. The Canucks have gotten a lot of bounces, and especially in terms of the scheduling. It's again, but and again, it's just one of those, like, guys, you really need to figure this out in the first 20 games rather than like at the very end when it's already too late. I've never seen anything like it. A team that is so good at winning when it's absolutely way too late. Like it's like you're already out of the playoffs. There's no way you're making it this time around. Like last year, there was maybe a chance like you were there. And whereas this year was like, okay, the Pacific Division is not very good. If you start the season at a decent clip, you could probably jump through and maybe get into that.
Especially this season.
I picked them. Yeah, I picked them to make I think I picked them to as like the first wild card, I think, in the Pacific or in the Western Conference. And of course, they started out so terribly that it doesn't matter anymore. Like it's too late. And that's the bummer here.
Yeah. KCY says, I feel like a Bond villain watching the Canucks escape defeat after defeat.
Yeah.
I think that's right.
Yeah, Dr. Doofenshmirtz, for any of you Phineas and Ferb fans, like he just keeps coming up with new innators that always have a self-destruct button just sitting there. And it's like, why do I design these with them? Why do I design these with a self-destruct button? I don't know why I keep doing this. And he does it again anyway.
Buyasha says, to be honest, though, Tocchet just seems like a much better coach in terms of structure, and clearly it works, which is why those bottom line guys are buying in and producing more. And I think that's what we touched on earlier with Sheldon Dries getting 10 goals and those bottom lines producing way better and playing way better than we thought they were.
Yeah, I do also, I will say, I don't like, I wonder how much of it, again, because remember, this happened last year with Boudreau, right? Like the pretty much the same thing happened when they made the coaching change over from Boudreau, from Travis Green to Boudreau last season, which, God, that feels like a decade ago now.
Dude, firing Boudreau feels like a decade ago.
Yes, 1,000%. I will say that I think I hazard to say that like Tocchet's coaching has made the team is what's made the team like light years better, so much as it is the okay, we know who's coaching us from here on out, right? Because when you know the coach is on his last stand here, regardless of what you do, it's kind of hard to focus on winning games at that point, right? Like the Canucks kind of knew more or less that Boudreau was toast by what? November? Like early November, mid-November? At the latest, yeah. So it's hard to really like, get yourself up to play an exciting hockey game when you know your coach is about to get canned or in some cases dragged into the public square for about 3 months. And yeah, when that like depressing stress is off your shoulders, suddenly it's a lot easier to come to the rink again, even if like, I'm not saying that Tocchet's changes shouldn't be taken for what they are, but like I do wonder at like how much of it is really to do with the coaching so much as it is that huge weight coming off the player's shoulders.
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, do you think Rick Tocchet's systems are that much different than Travis Green's?
No,
that's the thing,
I really
right?
don't.
Like,
that's the big thing for me is I really don't think that I think what we're seeing is very similar to what we saw with Travis Green. And which is very funny in hindsight. Like it does make you almost wonder, like if Rutherford had been in charge to make the initial coaching change, would Travis Green still be here? Like it's an interesting thought exercise. But as far as like, what Tocchet's doing, I really don't think it's much different from what Travis Green was doing before. Maybe just a little bit more playing like the top guys, but like even then, like I don't know.
Yeah, I'm with you. If you're joining us now, the Canucks win their 4th consecutive games, beat the Ottawa Senators 5-2. Andrei Kuzmenko scores 2 goals. JT Miller has yet another shorthanded goal. We are going to continue the Rick Tocchet talk into our 3rd segment, and we're going to play a game called What is Rick Tocchet Doing?
Which is, again, a very weird thing to do after a win.
And you can make of that what you will, but tonight, Quinn Hughes played 28 minutes and 46 seconds. Elias Pettersson plays 24 minutes, 10 seconds. JT Miller plays 22. Thatcher Demko plays his fifth out of the last 6 games. When Rick Tocchet first started and he was playing Artur Silovs and, Riley Stillman was leading in time on ice and all that, I said Rick Tocchet understands the assignment. And now with the minutes that we're seeing, the calls that we're seeing, and frankly, OEL just being held out of the lineup, I don't think Rick Tocchet understands the assignment.
Oh yeah, it's interesting how so suddenly, after the Canucks spent a first round pick and a second round pick to acquire a defenseman who has yet to play a single game, the Canucks are suddenly really trying to win a lot of games. Okay, so here's like the thing, and you and I talked about this before the show, and I've talked about this as recently, like, again, I feel like I'm living Groundhog's Day with this team a little bit. I said last year, many times after the Boudreau boost back then, that the worst possible thing that the Canucks could do is try and go all in on this playoff push because they think that they're good again. And in doing so, they overplay Thatcher Demko to the point where he gets injured, and suddenly they start next season in worse shape because they lost their goaltender to start like late in the season, and he's not fully healed up by the time it's the regular season starts. And sure enough, like clockwork, that's exactly what happened. They completely tanked their lottery chances. Still missed the playoffs and injured Thatcher Demko because they overplayed him in the last month and in the last like 2 months of the season. And he came back ice cold. He looked way worse off, and the Canucks lost a bunch of games right out of the beginning of the season. And right now, I feel like we're seeing the exact same problem playing out in real time with Rick Tocchet and specifically Quinn Hughes, where I'm looking at him playing almost 30 minutes
every night
in a meaningless game in the middle of March. And like putting aside all the like obvious, like the tank, oh, this ruins the tank thing, they're not going to make the playoffs part. I'm just looking at this as a complete carbon copy of, oh my God, they're going to injure Quinn Hughes and he's going to not be ready to start next season, and they're going to start ice cold again. And it's a huge red flag how much they're playing these guys in these meaningless games to me.
To be fair, I think Rick Tocchet said they are playing meaningful games in his book.
Oh boy, which is very interesting considering he started his time here saying that this is an extended training camp.
Yeah, that changed real fast. And Tony Smolak says Tony was for people who are regulars at Game Over, Tony was very anti-tank, and Tony is one of the people who I pointed out all the anti-tank people finally embraced the tank, and then they decided to start winning. And so we are now all at a crossroads about what is happening.
Yeah. I know some people are like, I'm not saying that they shouldn't be playing. I know a lot of people, but I know there have been like, some takes going around of like, oh, they should be shutting down players at this point. Like they should find reasons to shut down other players. And I'm not like suggesting they go that far, but I would just like, it's like, you can really just roll 4 lines and see what happens. Like there is zero need to be playing Quinn Hughes this much. And like, I get that like from certain points that they're like, okay, like on the power play, for example, like I get wanting to play him in all the power play time you want, because that's the kind of like time and structure that would really help you going into next season. But if you're going to do that, like tonight, for example, I believe he played 8 minutes on special teams, or at least on the power play. That means then cut back his even strength time. Like, please.
In a game they were dominating. Like somebody else made the point in the chat. Josh Watkins says they were arguably dominating tonight. Why was he playing so much? Like, this was a perfect game for them to roll 4 lines and not overplay their top players. It wasn't necessary.
Yeah, it was it's completely unnecessary. Like there is no reason why like Vasily Podkolzin should be playing 8 minutes, why Vitaly Kravtsov should be playing 8 minutes. Like it boggles the mind that this is the kind of like way they plan to run the rest of the year, because man, you are setting yourself up for a potential disaster where again you overtax your players. They are, when you're fatigued, the chances of you getting of an injury go up so quickly. And again, suddenly it's like, well, you've tanked your lottery odds and you've injured your best players that you need for next season to potentially make the playoffs, which is what you insist you're ready for. And it's like again, it just feels like a scenario where they're setting themselves up for failure next season already, just by the risking the long-term health of their players right now.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with all that. I think that if you look at the schedule they've got anyway and the players they've got who are young, exciting, untested, this is actually Talkett's original plan of an extended training camp is what they should be going with. Like, let these younger players, untested players play. I'm not saying shut down Demko or Miller or Hughes or Pettersson. Like, play them a regular amount of minutes, but you don't need to load up on them. And it makes no sense to me. I want to do a couple minutes on OEL because
sure.
Peter Wynn says, Team Tank, RIP, date of death, March 11th. Tank Commanders, we appreciate your service. You made a great point before we came on, and that is that taking OEL out of this lineup has actually made this team significantly better.
Yeah, I don't like it was funny when he got injured, looking at the defense, which right now is Hughes, Burrows, Juleson, Brisebois, Myers, and Wolanin. And going like, oh god, this like you look at it on paper, you look at it and you're like, wow, the tank is about to roll out in full force. And weirdly, it's gotten much better. And it's it's really alarming. It's not just that it's been like marginally better. It's alarming just how much better the defense looks with, say, a Noah Juleson out there than Oliver Ekman-Larsson, which is very concerning to say about a player who you have signed for the next 4 years after this, 5 years at an insane amount of money.
8.25 without the retained salary.
Yeah, it is. It's one of those, you really gotta, if you're the Canucks, god, you really, I hate to say it because again, Oliver Ekman-Larsson, by all accounts, is a very nice guy, and like but it's clearly gotten to a point now where where he is clearly not one of their 6 best defensemen at this point,
which is
like
deeply concerning.
Yeah, like, Josh
Watkins in the chat says it's shocking how OEL's absence has been either not noticeable or a noticeable improvement.
The Canucks under this, since OEL got hurt, I believe the Canucks are 4-1, or like close to that. I think it's 4-1 right so far, without Oliver Ekman-Larsson on the blue line. Which, to be fair, let's be fair here. That also happens to coincide with Thatcher Demko coming back, so that also can play into it. But the defense has clearly looked better, as well as Demko doing his duty.
Yeah. And Jim Rutherford, this is the line I harped on a lot at the beginning of the season when he said the defense is certainly adequate if it's healthy. It turns out it's better than adequate when it's not healthy.
Yeah, and again, this is coming after they traded Luke Schenn, who was doing pretty well. Like who was clearly good enough to warrant Toronto picking him up for a 3rd rounder. Like, yeah, it's suddenly when they're not healthy, they look better. The problem is really like, it's again one of those like if OEL was making $2 million a year, like we wouldn't be having this conversation at all. But it's the fact that he makes the most out of everybody.
That's the thing though, right? Like that's always been the Canucks issue, even with JT Miller and people harping on him this season. It's never really that these players aren't adequate or like living up to expectations. It's just that for whatever reason they keep getting these contracts that are deeply concerning.
Yeah, they keep clogging up their cap space for players, like a couple players. Yeah. And yeah, like I know people are like thinking about like, oh, you know, are they going to buy out OEL? Like, I mean, under the current structure that they're going, you can't. Like, you just can't. You cannot afford to have his cap hit on your to have it to pay him to not play for you. Like, as far as your cap space is concerned, for the next 7 years, 8 years, something like that, I think is the buyout calculator.
Yeah.
Like, your only option, really, realistically, if you're indeed set on going for the playoffs year after year, is you kind of have to go to him and be like, hey, can any chance you're allergic to your equipment and we can send you to Roby Daw Island for the next 4 years?
Just a little Marian Hossa issue.
Yeah, like that's kind of it. Like, you have to find a scenario where essentially you can send him to Roby Daw Island until the Arizona Coyotes are ready to launder that contract. Like, that's your only option at this point. Because again, like, yeah, you cannot have that, like, for all the like for all the complaints people had about the Luongo cap recapture thing, it's like you can't do exactly that for the next 7 years willingly. Like, that's your only option. Like, this is really the only option with OEL at this point.
Oh man. Okay. Canucks win 5-2 over the Sens. Last comment of the night, Tony Smolak says, instead of being choked that the Canucks are winning, how about giving the evil eye to teams they've beaten? I expected so much more from the opposition.
You know what? That's fair. Like,
I don't feel like I've been being choked the Canucks are winning. I feel like I've been like uncharacteristically positive the last 3 shows I've done. Like, I don't even know who I am anymore. I'm like, oh, I'm actually enjoying this.
Don't you just love a good existential? The Canucks are great at giving existential crises. Like,
I think I may have just reached the point where I'm like, yeah, you know what? I knew they were going to do this. I knew they weren't actually going to tank. I knew they'd be in the mushy middle. And so I give up on a rational plan. I give up. I will
it's almost comforting.
Yeah. Listen, I was right and they're winning. What could be wrong with that?
I think I commented. So I commented on the when you did the episode with a friend of the show, Rashma Marzadeh, that
was unnaturally positive.
Yes, that I have reached the John Boyce level of zen with this hockey team, where like I have gotten to the point now where it's like, I don't really care if they win or if they lose. I am on the side of, as long as I get good stories out of it, this is what I want. Because like, if you, for those of you who have never watched the incredible documentary done by a YouTube channel called Secret Base that goes into the history of the Seattle Mariners, which if you go and look at it, there are so many parallels to the Vancouver Canucks in there, in terms of just like how their story is gone and like their team history is gone. One of the things that they talk about in that is how despite the fact that the Mariners have never been to a World Series, you can't look at their story and be like, oh, this is an incomplete story. Like, and that's kind of the crux of it. And the line he uses is that the Seattle Mariners are not competitors, they're protagonists. And I think that so beautifully sums up the Vancouver Canucks, where hockey just kind of happens to the Canucks. Like, they're not playing it, they're just experiencing it.
That just blew my mind, because that's actually so accurate.
I think it's the like, as soon as I heard that, I'm like, this is the perfect analogy for the Canucks, and I use it all the time because I love it. It really is. Like, it's incredible. Like, some of the stuff you get out of like the Canucks story, like the Canucks like history and everything. Like, look back on like so many different weird things that have happened to the Canucks over the years, like a puck bouncing off a stanchion to win a playoff series. Like, in the 70s, people like streaking on the ice. Like, there's the Canucks history literally starting with like a lottery wheel to decide who got the first overall pick. Like, the list goes on. Like, this is the Canucks at their finest. And like, we've gotten a lot of those kinds of weird moments out of this year too. Like,
many.
Yeah,
So
like
many.
it. Yeah, like the banana Andre
banana.
Kuzmenko would be a perfect Dorktown subject. Just like the banana and Pepsi thing is fantastic. Like I think John Boyes has said that they never will do a hockey Dorktown because him and like the people there, they just don't know enough
Yeah.
about hockey to talk about it. And listen, guys, if you play your cards right, I can't say I won't do a Canucks dork. My own version of a Canucks Dorktown at some point in my career.
You
Like I would
should
love to.
definitely do that.
I would love to, and honestly, it's I'm not kidding. It is on the list. I would have to get permission to do it, but I would love to.
I'm gonna start like harassing David Quadrelli
Oh, please do.
just for
Please
this.
do.
I will
I
bully
thought
David until he lets you do it.
See, I thought you were just gonna stop there and be like, I'm just gonna harass quads every day for just because, just because. Hey, what you doing?
Just for the entertainment of it.
Just for the entertainment value.
Um, Avery says, can't wait to see what April brings to the Canucks. Might find out Jim Rutherford is actually 3 raccoons in a human suit. No, that's Ken Holland, Avery. That's just Ken Holland.
Yep. That is Ken Holland. That is Ken Holland. Like looking at sorry, I would say that was or Chuck Fletcher until he got fired.
Yes.
Like, yeah. Looking for what sort of problematic person can I trade for today?
Oh God. All right. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you again, Lachlan, for jumping on. Canucks win 5-2. They are playing next. I should know this, but I don't.
They're playing on Tuesday against Dallas.
Dallas beat the Kraken tonight. Miro Heiskanen in overtime.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. It's funny. I just so happen to have like the Canuck dog calendar sitting next to my desk here.
That's awesome.
And who's the cover boy for March?
Who?
It is Luke Shen and his dog Griffey.
Luke Shen's wife had their baby. Congratulations to the Shens. Congrats and he is now on his way to Toronto.
That's fantastic. That's so great.
And on that note, have a great Saturday, everyone. And we will see you on Tuesday. Kaya is going to be hosting the show.
Awesome.
Bye, guys.
Bye.